Hey everyone, what is going on? You are listening to the Brown Perspective. This is RO, and I'm here with Eduardo. What's going on?
No much, ¿cómo estamos?
Aquí. I want to have a discussion on this crazy housing market here in LA. This is something that has bothered me for a long time. This is just madness with this housing market here. And specifically, I want to focus on how this is going to really affect Latinos that never made the decision to buy a home and are still
Mhm.
renting because they're going to be in a really difficult situation, especially with the latest figures that we got that inflation is becoming more persistent. I don't know if you've been following the economy or not, the economic news, but the Fed has been saying for the last few years, especially since they injected so much money after the coronavirus. So let's say the last 2 years, they've been saying that the type of inflation that we're going to get as a result of that extra money in the economy, that it's only transitory, meaning that it's not going to stick around for a long time. But now we're finding out that it's more sticky, it's more persistent, and we may be headed towards more inflation for the coming years that is not going anywhere. And even before coronavirus, the housing market was already, you could make the case that it was already in a bubble here in LA. So it was already
Yeah.
expensive as it was, and coronavirus just made it worse. So I just want to have a talk about what we're seeing here, given that we both live in LA, what we're seeing here with regards to the market, and what, especially what I'm seeing as it pertains to some of my close relatives or friends that I know are in a pretty difficult situation, especially because they never purchased a home.
Yeah. And let's not forget that there were people, Latinos, who did purchase a home back before 2008, but unfortunately they lost it because of the Great Recession. So I think it was also a lot of people, a lot of people in the Latino community who lost their homes and who lost a lot of wealth because of what happened back in 2008.
Yeah, exactly. I think anyone that bought between 2007 and maybe 2009, because prices didn't immediately tank. They took a while. They reached their bottom, I think, in 2012. And so the people that bought between 2007 and 2009 or 10, they were in a pretty difficult situation. A lot of them ended up losing their homes. And so because the economy was so depressed, I don't think a lot of people were able to take advantage really of that dip in home prices at around 2012. I think it was between 2012 and 2015 where it was a pretty reasonable price that you could have gotten a home for if you were in a position to get it. And so those people, if they bought homes at that time, then I think they're managing okay right now. But I think though that the Latinos that will probably fare better are those that purchased their homes here in LA in the 80s, maybe even the 90s before. Yeah, because it was really in the 2000s where prices started going parabolic. But even think about it, right? So even the people though, if you think about a benefit that they have a home that is worth, say, like people that live like here in Echo Park, right? We have this article here that says that in Echo Park the average home is over $1 million, and you get like a 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom, or if you're lucky, maybe 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. But let's say you're a Latino family that purchased a home in Echo Park in the 80s or 90s. You probably paid like, I don't know how much were they back then, like 150, 250,000, depending on the type of home. Now it's close to $1 million. Okay, well, you sell the house. Well, then what do you do? Because you have to buy another house. You have to live somewhere. So that means if you buy another home here in LA, then you're not really getting the benefit of it because you're just moving, relocating. Maybe you relocate to a better neighborhood, so maybe that's a benefit. But in terms of being able to take money out and benefiting from that, it's not as much. The way that you truly benefit is to retire, sell your home, and move to a cheaper state, which a lot of Californians are doing. They're moving to like Arizona or Utah or other areas, so they get all the benefit. So yeah, so there's like a silver lining in that some Latinos did benefit, but there's also a lot of them that still live here, especially in the immigrant community. They're not homeowners, and they're in a really difficult position now because houses have essentially become unaffordable for them. Whereas in the past, they may have had the aspirations of being able to buy a home here. I don't think that's a reality anymore. If you're someone that's working at, say, a Target, or you're doing landscaping, or you're doing cleaning apartment buildings or cleaning offices, it's really hard for them to be able to save enough to get that down payment and then to be able to buy a home here in LA where the median price is probably 600,000, maybe even higher depending on the area.
That's true, and I think because of that, a lot of people are forced to live many in an apartment or a home to try to cut costs on it. And I think one of the reasons why the pandemic devastated so much of the Latino community was because you had these intergenerational households where the younger folks, the younger adults had to go work, and a lot of them were essential workers, put exposing themselves, but then also exposing their families and bringing back the virus into the home and maybe infecting abuelo, abuelita, which is one of the things that again, yeah, really impacted our community and continues to impact our community during the current pandemic. And the other alternative is move out further away from where you work, but obviously then that means that your commuting costs are up, the time that you spend on driving is higher up, and your overall quality of life is not as great because you probably spend more time commuting and on gas than you do being at home with your family.
Yeah. And so these are the unintended consequences of the policy that we've had in the country of cheap interest rates. We've had cheap interest rates for a long time, and the Federal Reserve is stuck in a really difficult position because they can't raise interest rates. If they raise interest rates at this point, they are going to crash the economy. And this isn't a conspiracy theory. I mean, they tried it. The last window that they had, the last window of opportunity that they had to raise interest rates was 2015 when they started raising them, and they started raising them at a crawl. It was very slow, and they got as far as I think 2.5, the federal fund rate, which is not really the rate that banks lend out. It's more the rate that the federal government lends out to banks. They got as far as 2.5, and that translates to about 4.5 interest rate if you're doing a 30-year mortgage, if you're getting a mortgage from the bank. That's as high as they got. And the first sign of trouble that they saw in the economy, the Dow Jones dropped about 20%. That was at the end of 2018. When they saw that, immediately they reversed course and they started lowering interest rates. So had they instead just kept the interest rates a little bit higher and kept going up, even if it caused if it wreaked some havoc at Wall Street, we would have been in a better position right now. But because they lowered the interest rates, they just kept inflating the bubble, making houses more expensive, and then coronavirus hit. So now they're really pinned against the wall. They can't even, at this point, they can't even suggest that they're going to start raising rates because that's going to terrify the market. So,
Well, they better, because I remember back in 2000s when interest rates were around the 7 or 8 points, 8% or so, and obviously that was pretty expensive. And then I do have to say that there were some of us, including myself, who benefited from the 2008, 2009 downturn because we were able, I mean, we had to save up. We got help from my suegra who helped us save for the down payment. And then we took advantage of the Obama home credit, which was very important for us to be able to get into our home. And then once we got into our home, being able to rent a few of the rooms as a way for us to help us pay our mortgage while we built equity and was also to be able to save and yeah, save and fix the property. So I know from firsthand experience the value and how helpful it can be to have a home and to have that asset that you can leverage and that you can utilize to either buy another home or to do other things that you need to do. But it is such an important part of achieving that American dream and that the dream of social mobility.
right. And I think that touches on on the point that I'm trying to make, which I haven't made it yet, but this is what I'm trying to say when it comes to the housing market.
Escúpelo.
That unfortunately, it's become the home has become the investment vehicle by which people get their wealth, and it's also become a speculative asset. So it's no longer just you're making your money on Wall Street, on stock, on bonds. People are making their money on homes. But unfortunately, because it's a home, because it's other people need to buy homes to live there. Especially each year, you have more and more people that are come of age that are out there looking for homes. What it does is effectively it punishes a segment of the population and it rewards others. And so basically, for those of us that may have had any advantage of rising home prices, it came at the expense of others. And that's the unfortunate thing that this economy, the way the Fed managed interest rates, it made it so that it kind of put us in this situation where we're benefiting off of somebody else's misery. So it's not the same as like the Fed having policies where everyone could have owned everyone that let's say the interest rates were high. Okay, well then people are not speculating as much on homes, especially this like the same way that it was around 2007 2008. Then people would have been able to buy their homes, and sure, they wouldn't have gone up 100,000 200,000, but you would have had your home and other people would have had the chance to also purchase their home if the house itself did not become a speculative asset, especially when you consider also that during 2012, because of the housing crash, it was all these private companies that came in and purchased these homes also, and then they just rented them out to people. So at the
Yeah.
end of the day, even though individuals benefited from the housing crash, it was really private corporations that benefited the most because they bought up all of the land and then they just rented out to people. And I think there should have been more protections around speculating, allowing the market to speculate on houses because of the effect that it would have on people. Like, they should have left the speculation to Wall Street, to the stock market, and these days to the cryptos. People that want to go in there and gamble, then they can go ahead and do it. But they allowed people to gamble and speculate with homes. All of a sudden, you have these like crazy jumps. Like I think since coronavirus hit, I believe houses have gone up by about 25%. So you're talking about uh, houses that maybe went up by around 150 to $200,000 here in LA. And so that just makes it completely unaffordable for people at this point. What it did is if you didn't own a home before coronavirus and you had all of your money sitting in the bank as cash, you just lost so much wealth to inflation. The only way that you could have retained some of that is by owning a home because the house got inflated. But remember, it's not like because your home is worth more, it's not like that's making you wealthier. That just means that it protected you from losing your purchasing power to inflation. But you're not really, people are not really better off that they were before. They just kind of weathered the inflation that we went through. But the people that didn't own property, they're in a really bad place because they're feeling the effects of inflation, and whatever savings they had, those savings buy you less, whether it's a home or a car or any other of the actual like food and any other of the things that people need to buy.
So break it down. And right now we're seeing more. We're seeing inflation creep up. Correct?
Oh yeah, especially after again last year because of COVID. Let me pull up the current inflation rates. I think it
And
was
I,
a yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, I think part of it too. I mean, is the inflation rate is the cheap money, but it's also some of the things that are happening in the supply chain, right? So people prices are going up because there's less supply of
Yep.
things. There's not enough workers to help ship things around. So this is kind of driving a domino effect that I think people are certainly going to start feeling
And
or are
also
feeling already.
yeah, and also because there's also a worker shortage again because of all the layoffs around COVID, and then also the vaccine mandates are making it so that Not everyone is going back to work, or people are choosing to voluntarily leave. So you have those shortages. But at the end of the day, the inflation is being driven by the printing of money, which they've been doing uh, for a long time. COVID made it so that they started printing money and directly giving it to the people, so that manifests itself as inflation, where people really feel it, which is at the grocery aisle. Whereas before, what the Fed was doing between 2000 and especially after the financial crisis, what they were doing with their what they call quantitative easing, they were purchasing all this bad debt from the banks. That type of inflation only affected like home prices. So I think most people were probably okay with that, just because they were like, well, as long as I can rent, or as long I'm a homeowner, so it doesn't matter. But that really, again, that we're suffering the effects of that, and now with the type of direct money injection into the economy, you start seeing the inflation that are hurting, affecting people at the grocery aisle. And the thing is that I've even read some articles that say that, oh well, inflation is a good thing, because that just means that people are going to be making more money at work, because obviously if your cost of living goes up, then inevitably your jobs are going to have to start paying more as well. But it takes a while for that to happen. Most people don't go to their jobs right away and say, hey, I just did the math, and in the last 3 months I've been spending 5% more on groceries and gas and so forth. So I need you to give me a 5% or a 10% raise now. I mean, even if you ask, there's no guarantee that your employer is going to give you that. So it takes a long time before people's salaries start catching up with inflation.
Very true. And I also know that a good number of people refinance their homes to take advantage of the very low rates, you know, mortgage rates under 3%, which is before was unheard of.
Yeah. Well, that's good if it's good if people were able to at least take advantage of that to refinance their homes, as long as they were able to, as long as they refinance to like a 15-year mortgage. I mean, you could still do a 30-year. That fine, you'll still get some benefits, but you've essentially extended that loan amount out. Let's say you had 20 years left. You refinance into another 30-year. You might be getting a lower interest rate, but now you're paying an extra 10 years worth of interest, right? So I think, but even that, you might still see some benefits if you crunch the numbers. Definitely more benefits if people would have refinanced to a 15-year. But I think a lot of people make the mistake of refinancing and pulling money out, right? And that happened a lot in the 2008 crisis, where people were refinancing and pulling money out. And I don't think a lot of people understand that you're pulling money out of your home. You're just borrowing money again, and which means you're increasing your mortgage payments, right? So sometimes refinancing can backfire if the people don't do it correctly, because they can refinance to a 30-year mortgage, which means they extended their loan, and also they took money out as part of the refinance, and now they took, say, $100,000 or 150, and now they have to pay that. They have to pay higher monthly payments because they owe more money now. So that's something that could have that a lot of Latino families here in LA may have fallen victim to, that they thought, oh, I bought my home for 250 and now it's worth $1 million. Let me go ahead and refinance it and pull money out. Well, I hope they were in a comfortable position to still make those monthly payments, because they're just essentially borrowed money. And so, yeah, I think I kind of went all over the place when it comes to the market. I wanted to focus on, again, how the situation here in Los Angeles, as I see it, and it looks like it's in other parts of the country as well. And by the way, not just Latinos, but again, people of disadvantaged communities, people of low income status. So that could be black or that could be white. They're just in a really difficult place, especially in markets like LA, San Francisco, New York, Miami, where I don't see how somebody that works like a day laborer, or somebody that's working class, I don't see how they are able to save any money to purchase a home here. So they have the option of either moving in to a multi-generational family, or what they call high density living, and be able to afford a home that way, or they have to move out of LA and go to like Riverside or what is it, Lancaster, and then commute into LA. But we have crappy transportation. We don't have public transportation, so they have to drive. So it just puts them in a really difficult place. And imagine somebody working class that was saving money for the last 5 years because they wanted to purchase a home. All of a sudden, homes just went up by 150,000 or 200,000 here in LA. That means that they just lost in terms of purchasing power. They lost so much from their savings. And so how long is it going to take for them to be able to save that much to be able to afford that 20% down?
If they even were able to save that in the
Yeah,
beginning
they
to
may
begin
have
with.
been at like 5% or 10%. They thought they were going to be at 20 soon. And all of a sudden this happens and they're back down to 3%. So, yeah, it's getting real out there, man. It's going to be tough. I think these next few years are going to be tough for our community. Uh, just again to those out there that were lucky enough to own homes and have been able to ride this wave and have some equity, just be smart about what you do with that equity. If you're going to refinance, try to get into a 15-year refinance. Don't pull out money unless you absolutely have to, and just focus on paying off that home. Or if you have some family in another state where the median price is say 400 or 500,000, I'm thinking Vegas, Texas, or other places, then it might be a good time to say, hey, it's time to sell this home here and move to another state and actually get those benefits, right?
Yeah.
Saddle the next generation with the big loan. Because the other part is that we may have a crash. We may have a crash in housing prices at some point. I don't know when, but if that happens, then again, it's going to be pretty devastating again, especially for people that are buying right now.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that. Like, when do you anticipate the next crash will be? And I know I've seen some friends who are millennials who are just looking at the market, hoping for it to crash so they can try to get into our home.
Yeah, well, if you would have asked me, say in 2015, I would have told you uh, pretty confidently that it's going to crash in a few years, because at the time the Fed was still raising interest rates. So I thought, okay, good. They're trying to raise interest rates because they know they're going to get in trouble if they don't. And it's only a matter of time before they get to a place where the housing market is not going to be able to sustain those interest rates. So then inevitably prices will fall. I couldn't tell you what the magnitude of the crash would be, if it would be like a 15% drop or 20 or 25, but I knew that at least prices would go down a little bit. But that was before. The message that the Federal Reserve is sending now, is sending people now, is that there's no way in hell that they're going to raise interest rates again. Which means that what they've pretty much said is, we prefer to have people's savings be wiped off through inflation than to raise interest rates. Because if we raise interest rates, then that means that we crash the economy. So that means that we could see even higher home prices for the next few years. So I know it's pretty bleak for those out there that are waiting. I know I for the longest was waiting too, and it's it's pretty bleak for those that are going to choose to keep waiting for the longest for a long time, because house prices could just get even more expensive. Because I don't see, the Fed has not. I mean, they're bluffing. They say that they're going to rate. They say that at some point they might start considering raising rates, but they can't. They have no room to raise them. They raise rates, and the house market, what they're gonna find is that, like in 2018, the Wall Street's gonna start getting jittery, and everyone's gonna start getting nervous, and they're gonna reverse course again. So yeah, it's a tough one. I'm not a financial advisor, but if you have money in the bank, you might want to start thinking about some investments where that money it's not gonna be it's not your purchasing power is not going to be eroded by inflation in the next few years.
Good points. Good points.
Any other thoughts before we wrap it up? Just thanks for letting me rant, by the way, on this topic that's very dear to my heart, the housing market.
No, it's important. I think it's we don't talk about these issues enough, and obviously, as you mentioned, this is not financial advice. Just educate yourself on your financial options, investment options, if you have any. I know that not everyone is in a position to purchase their home, but to be able to at least anticipate some of the things are happening, and just continue to to learn and position yourself for what may come in the next few few months or few years.
That's right. All right. I think we can wrap it there. If you all out there enjoy our content, make sure to check us out. We are Brown Perspective. Estamos on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. Nos vemos.
Ciao.